none of us want to feel like we're being the salesman to our friends.
That's right.
Welcome to... Well, are we going to start back from one? I don't know. Welcome to Marketing Theatre. We're going to pick up where we left off last time. So technically there's already 7 episodes of these conversations, but we're kicking off with a new focus. We're recording this on video, and also we're going to rip the audio out and it'll just be a podcast. So if you're listening on the podcast, hello and welcome. It's Paul Adams and Sherryl-Lee Secomb. And if you're on video, watching on YouTube, good to have you here. So the approach is going to be that we're going to break down the process of marketing theatre. Sherryl-Lee is, hello, by the way.
Hi, Paul.
Sorry, just sort of kick straight into it. Sherryl-Lee is a marketing expert specifically for indie theatre. I have been working in theatre for 20 years and mostly, well, pretty much all of it in the independent sector. So one of the big things that I've learned over that time is that as artists, we don't get taught the business side of what we need to do and what we need to know to be able to start making income, sustainable income from our art. And that is a real passion of mine. It is what I am pushing for myself. Everything I'm doing at the moment is moving towards living sustainably off of my creative income. And I want other people to be able to do the same thing. So marketing is a huge deal. Marketing is a massive subject, and not enough people know enough about it in our field, in that indie sector. So this is our way of trying to help provide some value and some education to people that don't know where to start, don't know where to look, don't know what to read, don't know how it applies to theatre, because nobody ever makes theatre for marketing for theatre. It's always for a SaaS company or a business or, something else. And for us to take the marketing strategies of the big state theatre companies and that sort of thing, it doesn't work as well for us because we don't have the resources, we don't have the manpower.
Don't have the time.
Don't have the time. And so, so there's all of that. So this is our way of trying to bring a little bit of ease to anybody that's working with producing indie work. And that's where we're going to start. So we're going to go right back to the beginning. And for episode 1 of the refresh,
Reboot.
Marketing Theatre Reboot, we would start with essentially where to start. So you are either likely working your way towards creating a theatre show, which means at the moment you're thinking about the marketing and what you're going to have to do, or like most people, you've already started producing and rehearsing your show, and now you're freaking out about the fact that you've got to market this and try and sell tickets, and you want to sell them to more than just your family and friends. So that's what we're going to go back to. I've made some notes so that I can remember exactly what we're doing, and I'm going to take notes along the way as well. So today we are going to talk about the challenges, where to start, and what are some quick wins that we can get quickly to help move the needle on our marketing. So this is where I now shut up and throw it over to Sherryl-Lee.
Right. Okay, I think for me, especially in the last few years since the year that was, it's important for artists to acknowledge the fact that this is going to be time-consuming. Marketing is time-consuming, and most importantly, that you didn't get into theatre. You didn't decide that you were going to produce or create a theatre company, create art because you wanted to be a marketer.
Yeah.
I think that's so important, because marketing is a very large part of what you have to do. And we almost sell our soul as an artist to be able to sell tickets or sell our art, whatever it is that we're doing. We decide that we're creating this piece of theatre. Oh yes, and now we have to sell tickets. And you realise how big that task is, how all-consuming it is as an artist. And you find that you are either... I find for artists that I talk to, it's really hard for them to separate the artist from the business person or the marketer in this particular case. And they emotionally you are emotionally attached. And to say to an artist, okay, detach completely emotionally from your art so that you can market it is very, very difficult to do.
Yeah.
And I think it's very unrealistic in a part. It is sensible. It sounds great, but I don't think it's possible to be able to completely detach emotionally from the art that you're creating, from the theatre that you're creating. Having said that, there has to be a point that you can look through a marketer's eyes at what you are doing and be able to create a marketing strategy. Let's not, I'll try not to say the word strategy.
Don't use the S word.
The S word. But create an approach that allows you to be able to see what you're doing through the eyes of your audience.
Yeah, I think that's the big key too. And it is interesting what you're saying about being able to step outside that. It's a common thing in any business when you're a solo operator or a small business operator. You know, we get told all the time that you have to not just work in the business, you have to step out and work on the business. And it does take some time to be able to get to that point. I think for most people, I'll disagree a little bit on the fact that I don't think it's impossible to completely separate yourself. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that there always is some kind of other thing, but I think we can teach ourselves or be taught.
It takes practice.
How to step away from being in it and look at it, as you say, from the audience perspective. And I think that's the thing that a lot of people miss, is they don't quite understand what it means to step back and look at it from a marketer's eye. What does that mean? And I think that sums it up perfectly. You're actually trying to look at it through the eyes of your audience, which brings a very special point up that we're going to talk separately about. I think we talked earlier about doing this separately, is that you have to understand who your audience is. And I know that a lot of people are like, well, our show's for everybody. It never is.
No.
It never is. And I think that's something that we have to absolutely grasp. And I think the other thing that we need to think about when we talk about target markets, I guess, is what type of work are you producing? Because if you are, for instance, a state theatre company, if you want to operate like them where you're doing lots of different pieces of work, so you might do a Shakespeare, then a contemporary Australian, a contemporary American, an absurdist, you can do all of that and you can produce all of that work. You have to understand that each one of those styles is going to have a very different type of audience that's interested in it. And so this idea of building an understanding of your audience, you have to be able to look at it through that lens of not just the company as a whole, but each specific piece that you're producing. So
I think it's also acknowledging who you are, because, you know, the example of the state theatre company or, you know, a large professional theatre company that is government funded, backed, that has, it's not just about the money, it's also about the perception. So it's not that they don't have to work as hard, it's just that they have different supports with the non-tangibles, and those non-tangibles is how people see them. So
define the non-tangibles.
Well, it's the view. It's like if you take the perception of community theatre to indie theatre to state theatre company, people automatically assume, and not just audiences but journalists as well, automatically assume that state theatre company is going to produce work that cannot be faulted. All right? And we all know that's not true.
Absolutely.
But the perception is that is top-notch, top-tier, and our expectations of that are different to what they would be on the complete other end of the spectrum for a community theatre company, which exists for a totally different reason, but we still view it through a lens that compares. So that comparison in there. And sitting right smack in the middle is indie theatre, which does not have the funding, is usually self-funded, self-run, hardworking. They're still trying to produce professional and pay their artists and produce a particular, as you went through the list, of particular style of theatre. Each indie theatre has a personality, if you will.
Yeah.
But the expectation that is placed on them is by audience, journalists, it's either too high or too low. So, you know.
I think that's really interesting for us to look at too, not just from an audience perspective, but for us to actually look at the type of business that we are. Because as you say, community theatres are often not-for-profit and they're not paying anyone.
And they're not there to do that.
No, that's right. But they can create really great shows and dump a lot of money into shows, because a lot of them, well, pretty much all the money that they earn through ticket sales is going back into the next production,
That's right.
excluding paying anyone, except I've heard sometimes directors maybe, or a music director. So they might pay those kind of couple of key creatives, but none of the artists get paid because they're all there doing it for love, which means that not-for-profit community theatre company can keep, and some of them are running on hundreds of thousands of dollars of budget. As an indie, we come at it self-funded. We don't have that money behind us. We are trying to pay everyone, which means that we're running on zero margin. If we're lucky to get a margin at all, it's very thin. But it generally means that we're trying to encourage people to come and work with us because we are going to pay them something, which means you come out of it on the other end with almost, if not nothing, to move and push into the next show.
That's right.
And then you get state and funded theatre companies that, like, you know, Queensland Theatre, it's legislated to be there. It exists in law and has to be funded, and technically can run at a loss and still exist. And, you know, we have to get away from thinking that for us as indie operators, that's, you know, everything they do we can replicate, because they have massive teams for fundraising. They have all of these resources available. So I think that's really fascinating.
Yeah, and ironically, once you can free yourself from this perception, and I find this a lot across the board, this perception that we have to be like the state. If you can free yourself from comparison, that from a marketing perspective for an indie theatre company is gold. Because if you are spending your time, it influences. If you are comparing yourself to the state theatre level, or, you know, worse still, Broadway, West End, if you are comparing yourself to a completely unrealistic view of what you should be, then you are, through that subconscious lens, making marketing decisions that you cannot maintain. You should not be approaching it that way. Possibly spending resources that to try and achieve this perception, and therefore misdirecting your budgeting funds. And
that's a great point.
You will find that you are actually not connecting with your audience the way that would most serve you both, because you're trying to look a certain way, trying to achieve a certain perception, whereas really what audiences want, they want to connect with you as a theatre company. They want to connect with your personality, and you don't do that through big flashy.
Interesting. What do you mean by big flashy?
Well, things have shifted in the last few years.
Funnily enough,
particularly obviously through social media, because that is the medium that most of us use, because it's, you know, inexpensive, and we have a direct link with an audience. But things have shifted with the expectation of the audience for that word authenticity. It's always been there. It's just that it's become mainstream now to talk about it. I have for a decade been trying to convince artists that being themselves is the best brand you can be.
It's so hard to understand what that means in the practice of it. And it's so hard.
And also releasing yourself to, and I'm not talking about what you had for breakfast, God forbid. I'm talking about posting the journey of creating this piece of theatre that you're creating, letting people behind the perfect brand photo of your show, which is, you do your promotional shots, but they used to be, I would say, 70% of your marketing, the branded shot, the hero image. That was a big part of what we did. Now I'm finding, in even my own work with theatre companies, when I take that on, I'm finding it's the undergirding, if you will, the foundation, but it's flipped, it's on its head. People want to see the other end of things.
Yeah, people love behind the scenes.
Yeah.
They love seeing that stuff. And if you can do anything that's going to show them, like one of the best sort of response videos I had was in the lead up to my last production, was in rehearsals. We were using plastic tubs as set piece kind of replacements. So we got these garden beds, and this was a garden bed. And one of the characters actually jumps up onto the garden bed in the scene.
Yeah.
And she was just in the moment in rehearsal and didn't even think, and she just jumped on top of this plastic tub and crushed it, like destroyed it, right? And it's hilarious. It was a great moment, you know. And I put that out as a little clip video because it's funny, and people loved it, you know. But just seeing that, a lot of people don't understand one of the most common questions an actor gets asked is, how do you remember all those lines? So being able to peek behind the curtain, but see the behind the scenes stuff is really great for that connection point of people to feel like they're a part of this show coming together along the way as well. Yeah.
One of the objections I get from artists who are still coming to terms with this is, but what about projecting professionalism? That is taken care of by that hero shot. And that gets back to the subject for today, which is your visual identity. You take care of the presentation of we are a professional indie company through the way you use the hero shot, the fact that you are consistent in the way you visually present your theatre company. And I'll stick to social media. There's many other things that we should be doing, but let's start there because that's what most people are using. But the way you visually present yourself consistently, simply, the same way, letting people become able to recognize you visually every time they see you, that hero shot. That's how you have established your professionalism, which allows you to present and let go a little bit of the need to present perfect all the time.
Yeah.
That's doing the job underneath consistently all the time and showing its consistency is a big key. So that, if we get really basic, it's the fact that you've got your logo on everything that you're doing. You've got the same font, you've got established colours, everything is simple, everything is clear, everything is easy to read. But you're using them in a consistent fashion, in little ways, through every visual aspect that you do, whether it be on social media, whether it be the press kit that you put out, whether it be the emails, the website, everything is visually consistent and the same. I could go to your website and recognise it because it's the same font colours, style that you've used on social media.
You're talking about that comparison between that and the actual stuff that you're releasing to advertise the show. But that stuff that you're doing as an extra to peek behind the curtain doesn't have to be branded with all of that.
No, it doesn't have to be perfect.
Yeah. I mean, I know you know this, but I love to really look across verticals and across industries. I've worked in so many now, I say so many, it's not like it's heaps, but, retail, events, training, the arts, SaaS, and I love digging into podcasts and interviews. One of the things that I've sort of seen presented recently that people were talking about is exactly this for Jeff Bezos and Zuckerberg, right? So both of those guys seen as evil, hated, these multi-big, huge billionaires that, were just so aloof and nobody liked them and they just seemed so arrogant. And that was the reputation they had until recently, where someone's gotten in their ear and guided them to share a lot more of their everyday life. Workout videos or photos, not necessarily workout videos in the gym, but, just photos of them working out and being normal people and, Jeff Bezos out having a day out somewhere with his wife or whoever. I'm not quite sure anymore what that situation is. But, these everyday kinds of things. And the perception of both of those guys has shifted for most people in the last 12 months because of it. So it is, it fascinates me that that's all it takes to be able to generate that little bit of connection that somebody needs. So it's not just and I think that's so true, that if all you ever put out is the poster and the image and the branded content, the problem with that is it starts to become, from my interpretation as an audience member, it starts to feel like it's just a sales pitch all the time.
You've productized theatre. You've turned it into, and I've said this to you before, you've turned it into a hash brown.
Hash brown.
So what's the difference between your show and this person's show? And we have a lot. I mean, we're in Brisbane, but wherever you are, there's a lot of theatre.
Yep.
There's a lot of indie companies. There's a lot of things that you can go, that your audience you're asking them to choose between. Now, you have no control over what they're going to choose, and that's something that people have to understand. You do not control the market.
No.
They make their own choices. You are simply putting it out there. But if you have productized your theatre, your show, the production you're doing, that's all you're giving them. You're giving them advertising. And so
Yeah.
all they're seeing is that.
Can you
And-
define for me just quickly what you mean by productizing? Because I have a commercial mindset,
Yeah.
and I absolutely believe that my shows are products. So when you're saying you've productized it,
Basically,
it's
all
more
you
than
do,
just
yeah.
the fact that you're thinking about it as a product, it's the way that you're treating it,
Yes,
isn't it?
yes. So you
just
are.
define what you mean by
You're
that.
just advertising the show. This show is on. There are tickets. Buy tickets. You're telling me nothing else. You're not giving me any connection with it, with you or with the show. It is merely something that I could go online and purchase, like anything else I can go online and purchase. So I have no emotional connection to it. Nothing emotionally to connect me
Cool.
with you.
I
And
would-
that separates it from, it goes back to that thing of being able to be emotionally attached to your art. You're allowed to be.
Cool.
And that is the part. It's sharing that emotional side of it with an audience and allowing them to connect to the show like you do, which makes them more, gives them preference. It makes them more emotionally,
Cool.
you know, I want to go and see what the outcome of this is that I've been following along this journey.
Gotcha. Yeah, cool. The phrase I would use for that then is commercially commoditize.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, that's what I would say for that. That's my interpretation
Yeah.
of that, because I'm a very big fan of the fact that this is a product that I need to make
Yeah.
in a way that I can resell and
Yeah.
sustain, and it will generate me long-term income, not just a one-off
Yeah.
kind of one-hit wonder. So I'm very much a fan of thinking about my shows as products. But yeah, my interpretation of that is the way that you're treating that product, the way that you're selling that product, the way that you're promoting that product, is you can commercially commoditize it
Yeah.
so that all you're doing is the sales pitch, or you can actually treat it like something as part of a bigger picture and a bigger
Yeah.
whole, which I think is the important part. Yeah,
Yeah.
cool, interesting. So we many challenges, we get that. So what are some of the things that you think are those things that will help somebody at the starting point? We know that they're either leading into a show, that they're sort of thinking ahead of the game. Cool, we're going to do this show, we need to start thinking about marketing. Or, holy crap, we've just started rehearsals, we probably should have thought about marketing. What are some of those things that people can do that will be those quick wins, those things that can help move the needle fast? And when we say that, we're not saying you're going to sell out. You're not going to sell out the show, but it is going to help you get some ticket sales beyond just your family and friends. So what are some of those things?
I think with the advantage of things like social media, you are leaning into creating user-generated community, if you will, allowing others to be able to promote for you when they choose to, and helping them to do that. I can't tell you the number of times I go to a theatre company's social media profiles, their website, anything, and look for something that I can use on my socials to promote on my. Now I have an expectation on my socials as to what I want it to look like. So if what you're offering me, the only thing I can find is some scrappy little image on a Facebook page, and that's all you're giving me to be able to cross-promote your show, I'm not going to use it.
Cool.
If you're not making it easy for me to reshare, I'm not going to do it. Most people will not take the steps that I will take as a marketer to reshare something that they're sort of interested in.
Yeah. So what are the types of things that would help somebody finding that, wanting to share something? What is that stuff, and how should it be presented to make that easy?
Yeah, make sure that whenever you are promoting, going right back to basics, it's making sure that you're starting with the way you've got consistent visual, fonts, logo, all that sort of thing. But make sure on every social media platform you have on every form. Let's take Instagram, a reel, a feed post, your stories or whatever. Make sure that you have shareable graphics on there that have all the information that you need. Now, I'm not talking about a show poster because that's too much. I'm talking about an image, but in every, in social media, making sure that in your captions, you might have your little, whatever you want to have, your quirky caption and your smart, really clever stuff. But a few dots down, you have every single time the where, when, what, how, and why. Because you're assuming that that post is there, but you're assuming that more than 5%, if you're lucky, of your followers are seeing everything you post.
I love that. So in every single post you put out, in the description of the post, add the details of the show.
Absolutely.
And,
every single time.
And where to find a link to it, because in Instagram posts you might not be able to link out, but you can link in bio.
Yep.
So Yeah, I think that's so great. I've got a mate who, one of his biggest frustrations with almost everything he encounters is how hard it is to find where to go to get involved. There was a local business networking group that we're both a part of, and they put something up about a session that was being held. No link, no information about where it was, how to buy a ticket to it. And it's like, you want people to come, don't you? Yeah. And
This is the bit about thinking like your audience.
Yeah, that's it. And
because you post all the time.
and taking out the assumption that they'll get it. Like, I love that. I'll be honest, I haven't done that. So that's a tick for me to actually remember. And to set that up as a template.
Yes.
So that I can just go doing a social media post, boom, 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 copy, paste, that goes straight in there.
I have a whole Google document that sits in my bookmarks that has got all of these things in there. And I have everything from the way I set up the content in even a Facebook event, if you still do that. The content of that, the content of promoting auditions, I have the same format and I just changed. It's all just there.
Just set up those templates ahead of time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so great. All right, cool. So every social post,
everywhere,
post, setting have up all the details about the show.
All the details set up in your Instagram profile. Have in your highlights the what, where, when, and how. Never assume. I think it's just if you think through it, the eyes of your audience, every touch point, everywhere they go, that they see your company on your website, social media, emails. Everywhere that they are, never assume they have seen anything before.
I think that's key. That is so key. I was literally edging towards saying the same thing, is that we have to take out the assumption that people have seen something before. We have to assume that this is everybody's first time seeing it. And if it's not, it's okay, because we know it's at least 11 to 14 touch points before someone often takes action.
Yeah.
So you need to assume that it's going to be on the 11th or the 14th or the 23rd or the 67th touch point that they're going to decide to buy that ticket, and that information needs to be right there for them.
That's right. Nothing more annoying than having to go look for it, and most people will not.
Yeah, people want
That's the thing
convenience.
Yeah, they're not as emotionally attached as you are.
Yeah, great, cool. What else? What's next? What else can we move the needle with?
Make sure, so going back to, you can set up a press kit, a simple press kit. And what I mean by press kit is a Google Drive folder or a Dropbox folder, just a link, a bit.ly link that you can, which is just a URL, a shortener of URLs that allows you to track the number of clicks that have been on it. So it's a measuring tool. But a Google Drive or a Dropbox folder that in it has, without any text on it, some great high resolution, full color photos, promo photos of your show. There's nothing on them. Journalists, if they want them, don't want anything on them. And then you have a PDF document that can be just a basic press release, if you like. Better still is create a PDF document that is pages, that has the photos in use. It has notes about the producer. It has notes about the cast, including bios of cast members that have got interesting bios, or thinking like your audience, like a journalist, like other people, what would they find interesting to know? It could even have a page about interesting notes about the production, either yours, when it's been done before, awards it's won, those sorts of things. Definitely ticketing and venue information. Anything that if I wanted to go in and help you promote, and there are people, there's a growing number of people who do that around in the community. I could go to that drive, you could put that in your bios, you could do it anywhere you like, and I could click on that link, and in there would be everything that I would need quickly to be able to create something that suited my platform that I could cross promote for you. I could count on one hand the number of companies that do that.
Yeah.
They make it too hard.
That's great. And I would also suggest, just like any other company, pop a little note in there about how to use the logo and that kind of thing, because that way you're not getting people sharing your logo in a way that doesn't suit your brand either.
Yep.
So I would go that little extra step. Great. So simple press kit, non-branded photos. So just clean photos.
You can brand them. You can have.
I was going to say have both.
Yeah,
so have
both
non-branded photos.
Yeah, so if you want that more
photos.
control, no problem.
Yeah. Different aspect ratios. Go square. Go portrait. Go vertical.
Have both. You'll find that probably I find that landscape is used more than portrait.
Interesting.
Yep. But definitely have both, because journalists have no editorial control anymore on that.
Yeah. Great.
High resolution, always in colour. because it can be, you could put black and white in there if you like, but again, what controls do you want to have over it? I've found over the last few years, loosening the controls has been beneficial in marketing.
Interesting.
You've got to be careful how you do it. But when I say loosening controls, it's this idea of user-generated content that's come in and taking advantage of that. How can I help someone else to promote my show? How can I do that? Making sure that it's, and not tight. We used to hang on really tightly into you shall do this. And that really doesn't work anymore. Like there's times for that, certainly, and business is a whole different thing. But for indie theatre, finding ways that you can loosen the controls and just let people go. And that includes your cast as well. Within your theatre company, what are you doing? What sort of content are you putting out that your cast want to share?
Yeah.
That
that's really important.
your people want to share. They don't want to always be sharing buy tickets. They don't.
No, that's right.
So what else are you doing?
None of us want to feel like we're being the salesman to our friends.
That's right.
So I think, and that comes back to what you said earlier about finding that other type of content that we can share that reminds people that they're in a show. It might be a rehearsal moment. It might be a weird thing that I tried on in the costume fitting that we're just not going to go with. Absolutely, just that stuff that people can promote, push it out there.
Yeah.
It's such a great idea. Cool. Anything else?
No.
That's it? Great. Well, that's great.
That's a great starting point.
Really great places to start. So we're talking about a bit of a press kit that you can put together that you can give access to people that want to share information. And
when I say press kit, it's press kit. I should probably change the name because that infers that it's only for journalists. It's not anymore. In fact, journalists are probably the smaller part of your work. The bigger the bigger audience that is going to share for you are other people online.
Great.
So having that kit there. I think going back to the basics, yes, immediately it takes 12, 18 months, even 2 years to establish a brand, but I can get the needle to move in 3 months on a theatre company that has got no visual identity at all by consistent and simple colour palette, fonts used on everything, the same thing, not chopping and changing to, the fact that you're bored. Colours, fonts, and your imagery, and being consistent across everything that I look at. It's the same. So no matter where I look, I can recognise your company, and that takes time. So you've got to do it for months. That can move the needle more than people realise. Yeah,
great. 2 things that I want to touch on real quick before we wrap this one up, because I think we've done some pretty good. There's a lot there to digest. When you're talking about, firstly, I want to say, totally agree with you. Again, comes back to that sense of not expecting that everybody has seen your content, not expecting that everybody has been all over it, and that everybody, the idea, and this is something I've heard a lot as well, that whole idea of I'm bored with seeing this image, so now I'm going to change it. I think that was just a little flyby comment that you just made there, but that is such an important thing, that your audience is nowhere near as bored with your images and your content as you are. And you just have to put up with that, and that's okay, because they aren't seeing it. Like every Facebook post you show is going to, way less than 10%, sometimes probably less than 5% of the people that follow you. People on Instagram aren't going to be seeing every post. It doesn't matter what social post you put it on. Everybody that's following you is not seeing every post that you do, which also means that you can reshare posts at times down the track. So, once a month you might have the same 2 or 3 pieces of content that come out, and that's okay, because it's very likely that a lot of people that saw it last time aren't going to see it this time, and people that didn't see it this time are going to see it. But I think that's such an important point, that we get bored with our own marketing, but our audience doesn't. They're not there yet. And it's interesting because people change their logos and change their branding and that sort of stuff when the audience doesn't even know who they are yet. So really great point. Don't change things just because you're bored.
Be strategic about it. Doesn't mean you can't change up a brand, but it's got to be strategic.
Absolutely. And when you're just talking then about moving the needle, you just said if I do these things for a few months, it always moves the needle. What does moving the needle look like? What are you talking about in regards to? Is it email signups? Is it awareness and follows on social media? What is it you mean when you're saying move the needle? And how far is that needle moving in that time?
Interesting.
0 to 100,000, 0 to 1, 0 to 10. Where are we at?
Let's probably a little bit more tangible. If I take an example of a tiny little theatre company in a suburban theatre company that had was struggling for artists to be interested in the work, to come and work with the company, and definitely struggling for, which is the other side of things. You're not just promoting to ticket audiences; you're looking to build your community. And struggling to sell 100. The venue that they were in was 100-seat capacity, so struggling to do that. So in the 3-month period, they had no visual identity at all, and it was an argument. I remember this is the perfect example of why your logo really doesn't matter as much as you think it does.
Yeah, so
because
true.
there was such an argument over the logo that I wanted to try, and I thought, let's just leave the logo.
I don't mean to laugh.
You've experienced it before.
So many. I spent $1,000 on this logo. I'm like, you could have just typed the name of your business.
Yes.
Honestly.
I mean, big business, big deal, but really, it's less important than you think. But I'm sort of going, okay, just let's not argue about the logo. Leave the logo entirely as it is. And I just went in and created a consistent visual identity. Every time we posted something, it was the same colours, same colour palette, which can be 6 colours if you like. Same bold, simple, easy to read font. It was almost on the verge of boring, but it was highly contrasting to everything else that was going through the feed at the time. And it was consistent. And over a 3-month period, they suddenly started to realise that they were being seen because they started to get contact from artists who were interested in offering workshops, in participating in creative work. So hearing from people that didn't even know existed.
Brilliant.
And then, of course, on the other end of the spectrum is selling tickets.
And how often in that 3 months were posts being scheduled?
Oh, well, that's
how
a
many
lot.
posts went out?
That's a lot. If you're looking, you're looking 3 to 5 times a week, just in the feed itself.
Yeah.
Then you've got all the other elements of social media. And in that time, in that 3 months, I mean, this was solid work. So that's also, creating the same visual image on their email that was going out, every couple of weeks. So it's consistent, and in social media, being consistent.
So they had a bit of a mailing list?
They had a bit of a mailing list. It might have been a couple of hundred people. It wasn't much. So that was that. It was everything. It was getting everything that they were putting out, whether it be signage they used in the foyer. Everything was just trying to tie in this same visual identity, which individually seem like insignificant things.
Yeah.
But it's about perception.
Yeah.
So in that 3 months, the company itself was still struggling to change, grow, deal with its leadership issues. But the perception of them on the outside was such that
things were happening.
Things was happening.
Yeah.
They were selling tickets. They were getting interest from other artists, which helps you in turn to grow.
Yeah, it's so interesting. People really want to be connected with and back a winner.
They do.
They want to see, and it's not that you have to lie, but I think just showing activity, so much happens behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Like I was documenting stuff in my last show. I got just hours of footage and photos and photos. I didn't have enough time to post it all. And, I really need to get somebody else in to do that next time. But, there's just so much going on in the background that, and as you say, we judge it to be insignificant. But again, is it interesting to somebody that doesn't know our world?
Yeah.
It's such a great point.
As
it's one I need to remember more too.
As companies, we actually have all the content that we need within our stories, within our company. We just have to learn how to bank it, learn how to use it.
Love it. All right. Let's wrap it up there. I think that's a good first reboot episode. So thanks for listening. If you are interested in connecting with Sherryl-Lee or myself more, I will make sure that there are links in the description of either the YouTube video or the podcast for you to be able to do that. Is there any one call to action that you would love to leave our viewers and listeners with?
Love them to start and just to, let's go, get yourself a Canva account and just build a visual identity, a little palette kit. Your colours, your fonts, and just start being consistent in getting that visual identity out into the world. Just do it. Don't worry about it. Don't overthink it. Just do it. Just start, because So many people just sit, I've got to wait until it's perfect. No, you don't. Just do it. Better done than perfect.
Done is better than perfect.
That's
Let's
the
leave
way.
it with that. I love it. Excellent. See you in the next one.